To this month's May 2023 monthly market report. So glad for everybody that always joins us to be the educated professional on the topics that matter in our business. So for the next few minutes, we're going to spend time going through some late updates on prices, some of the best information on prices that we've gotten recently. We're going to talk about inventory and foreclosures and really then move into what the Fed's been talking about, maybe a coming recession, and give you the information you need to be the knowledge broker on these topics. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to start here with a quote from Doug Duncan from Fannie Mae, and he said this, interesting turn of events. On a quarterly basis, home prices rose a seasonally adjusted 1% in Q1 of 2023. The fact that prices rose slightly in the first quarter is evidence of significant pent-up mortgage demand despite ongoing affordability constraints. So, certainly good news, welcome news here in the first quarter as we're getting information out of that. And I sort of want to put this question on the table right now. Have home value declines stabilized? That's the question that I think this sort of leads us to, and I want to go in and look at the facts and look at the information. And if we look at, the leading indicators that measure month over month home prices, I think we can make a case that is beginning to happen, if not already happened, in home prices. Look at Case-Shiller, FHFA, and CoreLogic. And this is a look at month over month prices going all the way back to January of last year. And we started the year last year. This kind of started with a bang, and then around the middle of the year, started to see home prices month over month start to slightly decrease, and a lot of that due to rising mortgage rates and all the things that we already know. Well, fast forward to the latest information here, February and FHA and Case-Shiller, March and CoreLogic. We start to see that turn happening. Now, we're going to stay on top of that, but I think it's safe to say that as you look at this, some of the worst in home price declines are behind us. What you can for sure say is that home prices are not in this precipitous decline. I don't know if I use that word a lot, precipitous, but they're not kind of falling through the floor and in free fall. And I think that's important for us to remember, because you turn on the news and you hear about the worst is not even here yet, and we should expect home price declines this year. Not what the facts are showing us. To continue on this theme, Black Knight said this: just 5 months ago, prices were declining on a seasonally adjusted month-over-month basis in 92% of major U.S. markets. Fast forward to March, and the situation has done a literal 180, with prices now rising in 92% of markets from February. That's certainly welcome news for us, certainly welcome news for homeowners that are wondering what's happening with prices across the country. Last month on the monthly market report, we talked about prices. This is sort of an addendum to that, give you the latest information on prices, because here's what's around the corner, I believe. Here's what's coming up. We're going to start to see forecast revisions. We're already seeing this. Fannie Mae's change in March. They said, we might lose about 4%, a little over 4% in value in homes this country. Well, fast forward to March, and they're like, wait, hang on, maybe 1% value loss. I think that will continue, and we'll see a year that'll be flat, if not positive this year in home prices, because of a lot of the things that we've talked about, the lack of inventory, and I'm going to get into that in just a minute. But certainly be on the lookout for those forecast revisions out there in the world. We're going to bring those to you as well. Our research team is on top of this. They do amazing work in going out and finding the facts so that we can combat oftentimes the headlines. We can combat, maybe even talk in our office or people in the business that don't know that. But let's turn our attention to inventory and foreclosures. There's been a lot of information in the last few weeks that's come out with recent foreclosure information that I want to cover. But, one of the reasons that we're seeing positive movement in prices is because of the lack of inventory. And I think this graphic sums it up. If you have been following the monthly market report, you've seen it before, but this is a look at the buyer's market versus the seller's market. Where are we at right now? The months of inventory of homes for sale in this country going all the way back to the late 90s. And we went through the 2008 crisis and inventory rose in this country, a buyer's market. And then over the last several years, we've been in this seller's market and still are there today. That's important to remember as people are looking to put their homes on the market. We need more inventory, being in a time where things that are priced right are selling quickly today across the country. But oftentimes we hear information or there's information in the news that says, well, inventory is going to rise with a flood of foreclosures coming to market. And there was a new report that came out from Adam middle of April, and the title was U.S. Foreclosure Activity Continues to Climb in Q1 of this year. And while factually correct, I think it did a lot to mislead people. And headlines start popping up like more Americans are going to lose their home to foreclosure as foreclosures on U.S. properties rise. Foreclosures are on the rise. Foreclosures jumped 22%. Repossessions hit a high of the last 3 years. Foreclosures jump. You see those things all over many times in our business, outside of our business. And while factually correct, oftentimes very, very misleading. A couple things that are critically important about that is we have that conversation. We have the facts. We have a relevant market opinion based upon fact. First piece here, there were over 1 million fewer foreclosures in the last year than the average heading into 2020. So anytime you look at information, we always want to go back to 2017, 2018, and 2019, the last 3 normal years, I would say, in the business. And the average of foreclosures in those 3 years, 598,000, almost 600,000 foreclosures each year. We don't wish that upon anyone. Certainly our hearts go out to those that are experiencing it, but it's a fact in our business that this happens. Well, we go through 2020 and COVID, and the moratorium comes about, and you literally can't foreclose on people, and those numbers drop through 2020, 2021, and 2022. And as we've come out of the moratorium, we should expect foreclosures to rise, but not at the rate that's going to dramatically impact inventory and shoot us up into a buyer's market. Whoever is writing those headlines obviously didn't look at this graphic. This is a look at U.S. properties with foreclosure filings going all the way back to 2005. If you go and you see that rise up there, and I use my cursor here right in this area, is during 2008, during the housing crisis, when back then there were over 9 million foreclosed, distressed properties, deed in lieu, all the things that we know in the distressed sale category that happened. A lot of people hurt, a lot of people impacted by that. And today we sit right here, a slight tick up. Okay, so nothing like what the headlines lead us to believe. Being armed with the facts is critically important. The foreclosure activity by the numbers, if you want to have those numbers handy, 95,712 properties with a filing in the first quarter of this year. 65,346 started the process in the first quarter, and you see the rest of the numbers there. Our job is to be the knowledge broker, to understand that the headlines do more to terrify than they do to clarify what's actually going on. So what's our message in all this? Our message is pretty simple. It's this, and I think Realtor.com summed it up pretty well. There's no reason to panic, at least not yet. Foreclosure filings began to tick up in late 2021 after the federal foreclosure moratorium ended. And the moratorium was enacted in the early days of COVID-19 when millions of Americans lost their jobs to prevent a tsunami of homeowners losing their properties. The job of forbearance was to give people a way to bridge the gap during COVID. And I think, we've covered that extensively on the monthly market report. It did its job, and that is a good thing. And, as we kind of come out of this time, we should expect more foreclosures than what we've seen last year, but not a number that would lead to the tsunami, as they call it here, of homeowners losing their properties. So, being educated, having the facts at our disposal is critically important in this market to really being the expert. So I want to go into our topic on recession. The Fed's met and raised the Fed funds rate here recently, causing more and more questions about recession. Would that come? And I use their words right here from their most recent statement that came out in April, where they said, we expect a mild recession starting later this year with a recovery over the subsequent 2 years. Now, I'm not here to say, is a recession coming, when it would, how long would it last, or anything like that. What I am here to say is the talk of recession is going to heat up and continue to heat up as we go throughout this year. The economy slowing down, the Fed working to slow the economy down. So what do they actually say? Here's their summary of their March meeting. The summary came out in April. Given their assessment of the potential economic effects of the recent banking sector developments, the staff's projection at the time of the March meeting included a mild recession starting later this year with a recovery over the subsequent 2 years. So, looking at that, understanding that, and knowing that's going to be out there, there are a couple things that we want to understand. One, what defines a recession? Two, the question that we should ask is, how would housing be affected? So who defines a recession? First, the National Bureau of Economic Research defines a recession, and they define it as a significant decline in economic activity spreading across the economy lasting more than a few months. And, there's this common wisdom, is it 2 months of negative GDP? Yes, it's been that many times. And also it's true that the National Bureau of Economic Research defines a recession. But again, the question I want to go back to is, how would housing be impacted? This is really an area right now that I think, being a student of our business and having answers to how would housing be affected by a recession, how would that affect prices, how would that affect interest rates, mortgage rates specifically, are the answers to the questions that we need to be ready to deliver and be confident in what we say to the clients that we serve. So first question, how would housing be impacted? Well, Bankrate sums this up, and I think they did a really good job with this. They said, during a traditional recession, the Fed will usually lower interest rates, and this creates an incentive for people to spend money and stimulate the economy. It also typically leads to more affordable mortgage rates, which leads to more opportunity for home buyers. So there you have it from Bankrate. How does a recession affect housing? Typically leads to lower interest rates, and that creates an incentive for people to spend money. That then leads to more affordable mortgage rates. Difference between, they're talking about interest rates, the Fed funds rate, mortgage rates, what we know to finance a home, which leads to more opportunity. Now, we don't want to see a recession come in this country. That certainly is a term for an economic slowdown. It will affect people, but oftentimes, typically in our business, it's an incentive in the housing market. As we go through this, the Fed said a mild recession, and I think what we really need to be able to discuss are, what are the pros and cons of buying during a recession? Being able to have that conversation with somebody to say, okay, what are the advantages? What are some of the cons in buying? Pros of maybe less competition, lower prices, lower rates could come out of that. The cons, maybe stricter lending requirements. Certainly with some of the bank activity, likely to see that. Fewer options available. Maybe economic uncertainty now enters the picture. People think, am I going to have my job? Is my job going to be secure going forward? So there are things that we need to discuss and be the expert in, so that families, individuals buying can make a powerful and confident decision on buying a home during this time. But the facts at hand that we need to have readily available are, what happens with prices, what happens with interest rates, how does this affect what we do? There's so many things happening out in the world that we can't control. The area that we can control, that we can be the expert in, is the housing market. So how does it affect prices? Well, the first thing we can say is that a recession doesn't mean falling prices. We've said for a long time, recession doesn't mean a housing crisis. We went back and studied, our research team studied the last 6 recessions, and we found that 4 of the 6 times home prices actually appreciated. Twice they depreciated, once marginally in the early 90s. But what everybody remembers is 2008, when homes lost almost 20% in value. A lot of people were hurt. Maybe they saw parents or loved ones that were hurt during that time. And when they hear the word recession, that's what we think of in this country, because the meaning of that word changed back in 2008. So I think having some of this information handy, having it ready to be able to get out into the hands of people that are asking that question is our job right now. I would have these slides on my phone. I would have them maybe printed out as I'm meeting with people so that I have this information at my disposal. Second thing, what a recession, how a recession would impact mortgage rates is it typically means falling mortgage rates. If you go back and look at those 6 same recessions in our country, you see that each time we've seen mortgage rates fall, going all the way back to the early 80s. And having that information available to people that are asking that question, I believe will give them the confidence to make a powerful decision relative to home buying. I think this talk is going to continue as we go throughout the summer. Our job is to be equipped, really to have the answers to the questions the clients we serve are asking. I want to sort of transition here and cover a topic that I'll close out with today. I think it's an important topic. And I grabbed a visual that maybe helps us think about this topic. And it's this right here. It's a picture of a tree. It's the angel oak tree. It's just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful tree. Scientists say this tree is probably 300 to 400 years old. I don't know exactly, but it's an old tree. And the size of it, the canopy, I think goes out in each direction about 25 feet and has been around for quite some time. Also what they would say is the root structure of this tree goes out about twice the distance of the canopy. So if it goes out in 25 feet in one direction, it's going out 50 feet in the root system. So a very strong tree that's weathered a lot of storms, right? You can look at it and see that. You can see it's close to the ocean, so we know it's weathered some hurricanes. We know it's weathered some heat and some rain and some wind and all the things that bear down on a tree over 300 to 400 years, and it stood the test of time. I think you could make the case that it stood the test of time because of the strong root system, because of the strong foundation that it has. And here's what I'm here to say, to use that almost as an analogy. We live in one of the most foundationally strong housing markets of our lifetime, if not the strongest housing market of our lifetime. I'll give you 2 things to sort of back that up and tell you why I can say that. First one, the current rate on existing mortgages, according to FHFA, as of the 4th quarter of last year, the majority of those mortgages below 5%. Over 80% of the existing mortgages below 5%. Over 50% below 4%. Some loans that aren't going to default, those loans right there. People are going to work as hard as they can to keep that mortgage. They can't go out and rent an apartment for what they have their mortgage payment on. And that is a very strong foundation for homeowners across the country. Second reason I can say that is this right here. Americans are sitting on tremendous equity. 67, almost 68% have either paid off their mortgage or have at least 50% equity. When you break down the numbers, 38.7% of people in this country own their home free and clear. That's amazing. 28.9% have at least 50% equity. That term would be equity rich in their housing. So you add those together, you get almost 68% are in a position where they either have it paid off, they have 50% equity. That is an extremely strong foundation for homeowners across the country. The one thing that always reminds me of is back in 2008, people walked away from their homes because they literally owed more on the home than it was worth. And now, fast forward to this most recent crisis over the last couple of years of COVID and all the things we've dealt with, people have said this: we're going to do things differently. We're going to protect the equity in our homes. We didn't do it right the first time, but we're going to do it right this time. And it's showing up, building an extremely strong foundation for this housing market. The reason I bring that up is, when articles come up and they say, okay, foreclosures are on the rise or prices or whatever it is, our job is to combat the negative headlines with the facts of what's actually happening and reinforce those facts with the confidence that we live in a very, very strong housing market, which is the area that we can be the expert in. We may not know and can control the things that are happening out in the world, out in the economy, but housing is certainly what we can be the expert on. So I want to wrap up, and I want to tell you a couple things before I wrap up. You know, I'm so grateful for everybody that joins the monthly market report every month so that you can have access to the information you need to be the knowledge broker to the clients you serve. But if you were to ask me, why do we do this? We do it for a couple of reasons. One, we want to keep you educated and confident. That's our goal. It's our team's goal, really, that you would have the information you need to be educated and confident in what's happening on. Second, we want to provide you the most current and trusted housing market insights, really the truth behind what's happening, the data and the insights backed up by all the information we talk about so that you can be current, ultimately so that you can share content and information that matters. That's why we exist. And we do all of that. We do all of that so that you can be the expert. And our hope is that you'll use this information and be the expert to the clients you serve so that they can then make the best family decisions for their housing, the best decisions for they and their family. So we'll wrap up on that. We'll see you next month on the Monthly Market Report. Take care.